namely going wide on the board and hope they don't have Samuro can often just win you the game with some big field contact turn. And a lot of the time, just burn. If you can discover a fireball off of one thief, get a big Alex turn later on, or even just get your wicked stabs going face, Warrior is surprisingly defenseless for a class that gains armor off its hero power in terms of counteracting that burn damage. That's really the way I like to go as much as possible in Rogue versus Warrior at the moment.
Yeah, definitely feels like a strong strategy. And in terms of the build of Rogue that posesi is going for, he actually shares 120 cards the same as Glory, I believe, for this week. And then the one card different from posesi that from Alutemu that posesi and Glory have is the Penflinger instead of Guardian Og Merchant in Alutemu's list. So I'm not really sure if the lack of Penflinger for posesi is going to hurt him too much in this matchup, but I always remember that one series from Gabby where he played the Penflinger for so much value to just clear out those tokens from Rush Warrior.
Yeah, I know that Deadraw, when he was streaming a lot of Miracle Rogue recently, was saying that he likes slotting out one Org Merchant for one Penflinger, which does make sense. They fulfill a very, very similar role in the deck, but while the Divine Shield is often powerful, two of them can get a little bit clunky. So while I'm not particularly swayed one way or the other, I definitely see the reasoning for Alutemu to swap it out. But already, for Shaxy, he's got himself a pretty premium-looking hand, in all honesty. If he can fill out that turn 3 as the one weak spot, this is a get-up-and-go kind of hand.
Yeah, it is very strong. Shaxy himself is running the double Ogremancers in the Rush Warrior, which is probably a net benefit against Rogue, as long as the Warrior can be ahead on board around that turn 4, turn 5 period. And with Samuro and the Parade Leader coming down on board and a cheapened 10 Thrasher because his Gunnar will wake up next turn, I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption.
Yeah, and oh man, the fact that the Gunnar does wake up next turn is just so huge, because the Demon coming into play to allow Coin 10 Trasher, as you were saying, is so devastating to kill off the Octobot on this turn. posesi was really banking on this going off.
Yeah, I mean, it was as good a gamble as any. If it did go off, he had an amazing field contact turn, and while we did see that posesi had the opportunity to discount it with Prize Plunder on that turn that he played it, Prize Plunder is so premium in this matchup to remove a lot of the Warrior threats. So it looks like posesi is looking to go digging with Secret Passage and hold off a little bit for a bigger field contact turn next turn, and I think that makes a lot of sense because he can minimum already play 3 Battle Cries next turn with the Foxy Prize Plunder and the Shadow Step.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't need a lot off of this Secret Passage for it to be good. If he can just play a Swindle, play a Brain Freeze, anything like that to try and clear some of this damage off or draw cards to set up for a better field contact, I think would be good enough. So I do like letting go of the Secret Passage, even if it is a little bit earlier than you'd like.
Yep. posesi's goal is just to be very aware that he should not be behind on board going into turn 5 from Shaxy, because you can't play the field contact into the Ogremancers turn a lot of the time because all of your spells will be regenerating value for Shaxy. But those are the cards that you exactly talked about, Brain Freeze and Swindle. But posesi gonna go ahead and play the Og Merchant instead and step it to make sure he has a 4th Battle Cry for the field contact turn. I think that's very smart.
Yeah, I agree completely. You haven't seen a bumper car either at this point, so I think it's not likely that the field contact will survive if you put the Divine Shield on it, but it at least makes it awkward for Shaxy. If he has to attack in with a Run Thack or something like that, plus the weapon, that's a lot of the rest of your board that is surviving. So it is going to be the big swing turn, most certainly now for posesi. As Shaxy, his only priority here is just to keep piling on the pressure as much as possible, which I think probably does just come in the form of Playmaker. He still just has Ogremantcer next turn. It's not like the Playmaker is doing anything especially impactful, so just get the stats on board.
Yeah, while I did look at the Crab Rider first, I think Shaxy is just preoccupied with spending his mana efficiently, which next turn you really want to Ogremantcer, and then I guess turn 6, it's something like Samuro plus the Crab Rider. And the additional health on the Crab Rider, while it's nice, it often just gets defeated by a huge Prize Plunder anyway, so Shaxy's using the less valuable card in his current hand, which is the Playmaker.
Looks pretty clean to me as well. Org Merchant on your own, field contact, and then Plunderer, Step Plunderer. That's a full clear board.
I wonder.
Yeah, I like that a lot. He could be thinking about One Thief instead. What's the value of putting Divine Shield on this field contact? But I think the value is very high because Shaxi is just representing a weapon right now. Having the field contact be a little bit stickier is all the difference in this matchup because Posesi doesn't know about the Samuro that's in hand for Shaxi that will be the big difference maker next turn.
I like that he's not being overly greedy as well because there was some amount of reason to just go step Foxy there because you get to play Swindle. You increase your card draw drastically by that play, which then obviously increases your chances of hitting Jandis for the following turn or Kazakus, Mancrick, just the power plays. But clearing off the board in order to make it as difficult as possible to clear this field contact is huge.
Shaxi picked up a very interesting draw here. Looks like he's... Okay, I thought he was going to end up on Samuro still, but with the bumper car, he's actually able to save the Samuro and go for something like Crab Rider bumper car and 1 token to clear off the majority of the board and still just have that Samuro saved up. But I think what Shaxi's thinking is that what's the likelihood there's going to be a board with a lot of 1 HP minions in the near future? Maybe not that high, and because he doesn't have conditioning, he'd rather use the Samuro AoE, which is a bit more difficult to set up a board where it's good against compared to the Crab Rider and bumper car.
Yeah, that's right. And it's also better mana utilization because you can go Ogremancer plus Crab Rider or bumper car on turn 7, whereas you obviously can't fit in the Samuro as cleanly. And so even though I think generally you do want to be very greedy with that card in the matchup, in this particular instance, as you said, because there's no buffage in hand, just throwing it down does feel fine. But Posesi didn't just want to go tempoing out the Jandis there, instead trying to set up for a more powerful swing turn, possibly with Jandis Tenwu Jandis, a very powerful combo that allows you to get a double activation.
Yeah, nice ordering as well to go for 1 Thief before the discount on the Octobot, so he gets the discount on the spell. He didn't need the discount on the 1 Thief because he already had enough mana to spend all of that this turn. This conditioning pickup for Shaxi is huge though. Now the bumper cars and the Crab Rider will be very, very threatening. He could think about taking this turn to set up the Ogremancer though, because quite frankly, it's pretty strong. But Shaxi could be thinking, what's the bigger threat to me right now? Is it a turn of development of minions, or is it spells with another field contact turn?
It's really close, isn't it? Because I'm kind of actually leaning towards the conditioning plus 2/2 drops on this turn because you clear the board, which is nice, but not the most important factor. And it means that even if they just go for a bunch of minions next turn, you can probably use your minions plus the 1/1s that come off and set up a 5/9 Ogremancer instead of a 3/7, which is going to be even harder for the rogue to clear. Whereas this is a little bit more wimpy in terms of the immediate presence it pushes forward.
It's definitely weaker to Jandis on this turn, plus probably Mancrick, which Posesi has access to. But what it does do is Shaxi now has potential to set up the bumper card trade first, and then you put the conditioning on the tokens. And so he gets more overall stats on, or more minions at least. Not necessarily sure if that's worth it because this Jandis is looking very scary at the moment.
It's looking really scary, not just 1. But 2. You sack away the 1 Thief first, very nicely done, to make sure you have enough room. And any rush minion here would be absolutely insane, of course. Raz is pretty insane. Baron's Blacksmith, with the potential to brain freeze it immediately, is pretty insane as well.
That's kind of game ending, even if he gives Shaxi a 2/2. He's Samuro, so there's literally nothing Shaxi can do to clear this board. This warrior doesn't run any card generation to try and get Brawl, for example.
Yeah.
Posesi should just go... Okay, he's just going to trade the 2/2 instead, okay.
This is insane! Look at this board, the amount of buff that he's got here. Absolutely illegal.
Yeah, nice Ogremancer.
Man, can we get Baron's Blacksmith removed from Standard as well? This is just too powerful for Hearthstone.
Removed from the Jandis pool, just like it's removed from the minion pool. Actually, remove Jandis from Battlegrounds as well. It's too strong. Definitely, she's not the biggest problem, though. Right, so conditioning can bring the Crab Rider up to 5/7. Still pretty wimpy.
Yeah, I mean, he knows at least that this Raz is very easy to deal with.
Right. And then these riders go up to 3/3s, which I guess you want to play Crab Rider and one of those, so the Crab Rider goes in the 3-5, and he just can't break the Totem Golem, I think. Because the totems are actively bad for Shaxy right now.
Yeah, that's true. Especially as there's a potential for Step the Blacksmith and reactivate it on the totems, which would be insane. Okay, maybe not anymore.
All things considered, Shaxy did a very impressive job of clearing the board, but it took so many resources, and posesi has second secret passage now.
Yeah, I mean, this would just be absolutely huge in terms of upset for posesi. And I think you just start Secret Passage. Like, obviously you can start Mankrik, which gives you the, well, it gives you a 2-mana 3/4, and also the ability to play a 3/7 from your hand. But I kind of just like as much mana to work with as possible.
Well, the thing is, he has to deal with the Ogremance. He can't start with Mankrik because I think he wants to send the 7/7 face for sure. So it was either this line where you clear the Ogremance, or you go face and then passage and then hope you get a way to deal with the 2 minions that are left on board. However, this is posesi's last prize plunderer, so he didn't actually have a way to deal with those minions without using spells. So I don't mind this whatsoever from posesi. He gets to just set up lethal, which is absolutely huge.
He does, and obviously as Shaxy gets 2 useless hits here, it is knocking on the door of lethal already, and the Wicked Stab does just put an end to that. And for posesi to get the win there is absolutely huge. Very, very well played, of course, with the spot to attack his own Baron's Blacksmith with the Brain Freeze. Very, very cool line. And it means now that while we were looking at a sweep potential from Shaxy if he was able to take the expected win there, now all of a sudden we're looking at things being a little bit scary for Shaxy. He still has the Spell Mage, which is a decent matchup against the Rogue, very slightly favored as the stats in GM would show, and Paladin as well, the N'Zoth Paladin, which is again a reasonable matchup against the Rogue, pretty good one, but nothing insane, nothing to write home about.
Yes, it's really awkward for Shaxy because even if he thinks that, let's say this N'Zoth Paladin is favored against the Rogue, takes a win there, and then it's got kind of a bad matchup against the OTK Demon Hunter, I'd have to imagine, and a disastrous matchup against the Token Druid from posesi. So if it's the Token Druid that counters into the Paladin, you also don't want to have to be just left on your Mage in order to deal with that, because we already know that that's quite a bad matchup indeed. And I think it already looks like Shaxy will have to face at least 2 unfavorables in order to win the rest of the series from here.
It's just crazy. The first loss in a last hero standing match, it puts you on, really just dictates the way the rest of the series will go. It can be very, very difficult to come back, but it does lead to some very hype moments when the unfavorable matchup is won, as we just saw there from posesi. So still waiting on word, for word as to what is going to be queued up next for both of our competitors. Oh, it is going to be the N'Zoth Paladin, okay, from Shaxy. And have you had much experience with this deck? I know it hasn't cropped up, well, it's a very recent addition to the metagame, but Rogue versus Paladin, any big favorites here?
Well, I haven't had much experience personally playing in the matchup, but I've seen a lot of people stream it because it's just cropped up so much on ladder this past week. The N'Zoth Paladin becoming so popular with different builds, even Priest running N'Zoth, and it takes advantage of the fact that you can run very powerful suite of minions of different minion types. The Carousel Griffin, Raven calls it just the best card in Hearthstone right now. It's really great when you get it off Jandis or a Pexis Blast. Turns out it's pretty good when you just play it in the deck and you can resurrect it. And sometimes you can even corrupt it for the +3/+3. And that card is very powerful and tough for Rogue to deal with because they have to ping through the shield and then prize plunder it. And basically in this matchup, if the Paladin is able to get down N'Zoth and not immediately die that turn, they've just won.
They have, yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing that really sways this matchup, or at least makes me think that Rogue is, in my opinion, still in a decent spot against the Paladin, is the lack of Samuro. I felt that against the Libram versions that run Samuro and the Librams of Wisdom, plus Hand of Adal, going wide on the board as Rogue is super scary because they just obliterate it all and then it's very difficult to pull the game back from there. This version of the deck without Blade Master Samuro, yes, it has a broom, of course, to be able to try and rush back and clear the board, But if Rogue can get these very high tempo hands, for which it is famous for, with the Prize Plunderer's Brain Freeze, reducing it all with Octobot, something akin to this already, it can be difficult for Paladin to pull things back.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. Although Shaxy does run quite a suite of one-cost cards and a couple secrets in there in order to make the early game not so miserable for the Paladin. First day of school nerf probably is a nerf in this matchup. I would say it's a buff if you were facing Control Warrior or Control Priest, but you do just want to get the tempo early and try to be able to make sure that the Rogue can't just curve out with Foxy Fraud and push that early damage.
Kind of looking at Galloping Savior here. Yeah, even though first day of school kind of feels like higher tempo because you're getting actual minions into your hand, the curve of Murga McGurgle into Northwatch and saving that coin for potentially Hammer of the Naru is, I think, a very potent curve to be going for. But Posesi's hand on the other side is no slouch whatsoever. Kazakus potentially available next turn, probably looking at a 5-cost Golem to supplement the rest of this, but very, very high tempo overall.
That's right. And Shaxy, with no way to immediately clear the Octobot, says that I'm going to let you get the proc, but I'm going to have a 3-4 in the meantime. I think that's absolutely right. Shaxy won't have a way to deal with this Octobot in the near future, so he better just get his own game plan online. But yeah, early Kazakus, that is backbreaking here. These are not the ones you want to see, though. I guess the stealth is decent.
Yeah, I'm probably looking at stealth just so you can try and dictate the trades how you like. These are not great either. Probably... maybe I should take +2/+2 there. I was going to say card draw, but you can develop a lot of minions next turn.
Yeah, he also has the benefit of potentially taking the reactive Golem because he does have a rather weird turn 4, and if by some chance Shaxy was able to clear the Kazakus, Posesi can have a strong response and gain the tempo back. So I think all the options have their merits here.
Wow, okay. Not terrible on the options. Just getting Bladed Cultist alone makes any first day at school hand pretty premium. But it is just going to be following up with Murga McGurgle. Slow hand all around here for Shaxy. And Posesi has to be thinking now. Obviously, he's narrowed it down to either the Galloping Savior or... he knows it's not Oh My Yog, right? And so at that point, yes, so it has to be Reckoning. Sorry, I forgot the name of the card. So at that point, he can test, of course, for both with a big Prize Plunderer, because if he finishes it off with the Prize Plunderer, it would have dealt 3 damage and then died thanks to the Reckoning. But he could also potentially try and use it to kill off the horse that comes up of Galloping Savior. But in the end, it looks like he's just going for a much lower tempo route and just going to be playing 2 cards instead, which is still very sensible, I think. It goes wide on the board, but doesn't proc any of the secrets.
That's right. It's quite strong for Posesi because he knows of the lack of Samuro or lack of any AoE really from the Paladin. He's just concerned about maybe using too many resources by the time he gets field contact. But depending on if he took on the Golem, I think it will be fine as long as he keeps hold of the board.
Yeah, I mean, he knows 100% now what it is. So he could, of course, gone either way with Foxy Fraud into Vanessa or... the Neophytes into Vanessa. Pretty much the same play, just means that he saves the Foxy Fraud instead. Which, probably better. Get the immediate disruption now and save that for a swindle later on instead.
Yep, that's definitely fair. Shaxy's best hope, honestly, of dealing with minions of the side is generated things off of first day of school, such as Penflinger and Elven Archer. And so if Posesi could potentially disrupt the second one, then his board is extremely safe. And it already, as it is, looks pretty safe indeed. This Gibberling is not able to go wide because of that Cult Neophyte.
I mean, he just can't do anything here. This is the kind of problem I was talking about, is that this build of Paladin, it's still Paladin at the end of the day. It's a little bit clunky. It doesn't react very well. It just puts minions on the board and buffs them. So as soon as you fall behind, things can get very, very difficult. As Shaxy did take the draw 2 cards Golem, which... I mean, I think admittedly he's going to be pretty sad that he didn't go for the buff in this instance, and I do still stand by the fact that with the way his hand was shaping out, on average, you could expect to have at least 2 minions on board, at which point I think it's worth it. So it's going to be a much slower game now for posesi, but he does, at the very least, have a lot more follow-up now.
Even if it's slow, he is winning very, very hard. The only comeback mechanism for Shaxy is the broomstick, and then you have to have cheap minions in order to pair with the broom, which he hasn't even picked up yet. So Shaxy, the best he's able to do now is finally get some minions on the board. It's a lot of stats for the amount of mana he spent, but he is just so dead in the near future.
I mean, the only thing restricting posesi is board space at the moment, because otherwise he could just go Neophyte, Murga, Foxy, double Prize Plunderer. Obviously, that would proc the Galloping Savior, but at that point you can just kill it with the Prize Plunderer or the 5/5 Golem. Like, everything is just so clean here. It's just about maximizing your development and still making sure that you're not overextending onto the board, or at the very least that you have board slots to play everything you want to play.
Right. And while posesi can be very aggressive here, he's still cognizant of the threat of Broom, so I think some value trades are in order here. He started off by getting rid of the 3/2 with his weakest minion, makes some nice board space, and he'll know that if he trades off the Red Scale Murloc, there's a good chance that Shaxy will play Dragon Scale the next turn. However, that's not bad for posesi whatsoever. It's a really slow play, so I think he's fine to get rid of the Murloc. Uh-oh. That's okay. Can play the second one. That's fine.
Totally fine. Obviously a mistake, but not a disastrous one at all. Still winning this game. Just finish your turn, and you're looking fine.
Yeah, the mistake is not going one thief, I guess, instead of Prize Plunder.
Or just not targeting the other one first, right? If he targets the 2/3 and then the 3/4, then he mops it up very cleanly. But it doesn't matter, because Shaxy literally just concedes a handful of buff cards, secrets, random ragtag minions, and it just does not even come close to the ruthless efficiency of Rogue when it is at its prime. A very well-played game from posesi. I think knowing exactly how to play around secrets. It was the only real decision point for him in that game, but he did it very, very well, and it means that he is now 2-0 up, and things are looking disastrous for Shaxy. He needs a clean sweep with his Spell Mage.
Yeah, it already looks like a tall order against just the Rogue, because posesi has been pretty much on point with it for the most part. But after that, the Mage, if it does get that win, has to get a win against Token Druid, which we already have seen is a disastrous matchup. Just ask Blitzchung. And even posesi, playing from the Mage perspective, knows how hard it is to get a win from that scenario. And I'm sure you're a very happy man right now, Derek, because we could just be seeing the Miracle Rogue sweep.
I am a happy man indeed. I always love to see it. I was boasting of my stats on Lad the other day. If I very heavily curate the time period of stats that I show, I have a very, very nice win rate where I was just on a roll. If we look, zoom out a little bit and see my stats learning the deck, things start to look a little bit less rosy. But a deck I know that you obviously have had a huge amount of success with, hitting rank 1 legend, if I can boast for you there. It is going to be Shaxy on the Spell Mage. It has, of course, seen recent nerfs. I think that is a slightly old graphic there, as Refreshing Springwater does now cost 5 mana, despite what it may say on the left there. And that has, I think you've been saying, had surprising impact on the deck.
That's right. It just has so many rolling implications because the Spring Water is such a key card to bridge turns and also extend turns. So just the fact that it costs 1 mana more means that your Apexis Blast could be coming down 1 turn later. It means that you can't eke out an additional burn spell while you have your spell damage minion on board. And it also just means that if you draw really dead, you are 1 turn away from being able to get anything done. And that 1 turn is very crucial against Rogue because they are able to disrupt with Cult Neophytes, they're able to set up lethals with Wicked Stab and Alexstrasza, and they're able to be very aggressive in the early to mid game.
Yeah, they are indeed. But it's still going to have to be a bit of an uphill climb for Shaxy, even if he takes down the Rogue, and even if we want to call Demon Hunter favorable for the Mage, which I think is probably true, but debatable. The Druid has been a very, very difficult matchup for the Mage overall, so a very, very uphill climb left here for Shaxy. I guess the main thing that would be worth talking about here for Shaxy is his actual queue order. Starting with the Paladin overall against the Rogue, I do find a little bit surprising when you could have just gone for the Mage right out the gate, which does, I think, have a better win rate against the Rogue than the Paladin. But either way, he is left now with just the Mage to sweep.
And this is not exactly what you want to see because there's no Encanter's flow. While Font of Power is, of course, very decent, especially when you're on the play, I feel that these days you really, really need the flow early in order to beat Rogue. Otherwise, things just get too clunky to the same level that we saw from the Paladin a while ago. We do see Shaxy has the flow, though, and some very good cheap cards to follow up with it. Wormweaver can't be underestimated in the matchup as well because it's one of the ways for the Mage to go wide on board.
I mean, both players with pretty impressive starting hands here. I think Shaxy probably has the slight upper hand at the moment, but Kazakus Golems can be such a nightmare for Mage to deal with. If you can get Stealth copy, Divine Shield copy, if you can then replay those with Tenwu of the Red Smoke in the mid game, things can get very difficult for the Mage to actually clear the board. But what was I talking about, Gia, saying that Springwater had been nerfed? Of course it's still 4 mana here, which is a huge draw for Shaxy to pick up next turn. This hand is just looking like lightning.
Of course it's nerfed, Derek. That card is supposed to be 3 mana, draw 2 cards, and gain 1 mana. It's just 4 mana, draw 2 cards, and then gain 4 mana.
Disgusting.
Well, just gonna keep going with the card draw. Coining Kazakus didn't necessarily feel so good because you do generally want to go for the 5-cost golems in this matchup, just like most of the matchups, because being able to get stealth or particularly Divine Shield is very annoying for the Mage. Like, they almost need to have devolving missiles specifically in order to deal with that neatly.
And at this point, I actually don't hate the idea of going Orc Merchant. I appreciate that it's nice to have with field contact, but you're going Kazakus into 5-cost Golem, and then by the time turn 6 rolls around, I really think the impact will be less than having just played a 2-1 and made your board harder to clear with Combustion.
Yep. Actually gonna see what's in the box, looking for Combustion. Even Brain Freeze would be decent here. Just any 1-cost spell so that he can do something with the Wormweaver, but that's kind of a whiff. He can, however, just go Lunacy if he wants. It's not bad in this matchup to have flown first. However, he has already drawn Flame Strike and Mask of Cthulhu, and so there's only one potential Libram of Hope in the deck if he does go Lunacy.
Yeah, I think I'm just a bigger fan of developing more tempo. This is the scary point as Mage versus Rogue. If they push 5 damage a turn in the early game, you die really quickly. As soon as they go Coin Alexstrasza, things can get real rough. But Shaxy disagrees. He is letting rip with the deck of Lunacy. No card draw in hand. He's already found 2 of his 7-cost spells, so he's not even especially likely to find Libram of Hope if he wants to recoup some of that health that he loses. It's a very, very bold strategy, and I'm excited to see if it pays off.
Yeah, he is decently likely to find card draw, though, because now it's the Ring Tosses and 1 Fireball that have gone down to 3 and then up to 6 in such a way that you can get Nourish and Skull of Gul'dan and all of that good stuff. I think Shaxy is just saying he wants to milk this Wormweaver for a bit more board presence, so he didn't just want to drop it there, and pinging was a little bit too slow. So even if his next turn is Wormweaver plus Font of Power, he says that's fine. And in 2 turns' time, hopefully he'll have drawn something strong with the Lunacy.
Divine Shield and Stealth. Assuming that the 5-cost option was picked, those are both premium. I think probably Divine Shield I like a little bit more. You're wandering into Flame Strike territory now.
Yeah, I definitely like that better. And it's not just Flame Strike, it's any AoE that Shaxy has also just generated from the Lunacy. Petting Zoo is board presence and a cheap way to get the Wormweaver off, so I am a fan. They're just going to go Wormweaver and then see what's in the box with Font of Power, you have to imagine, and just go as wide as he can on the board. Get buffs on the Mana Worms as well, so that they're not just VT'd that easily.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. Just makes for a lot of immediate board presence, which usually is very, very good. And to be fair, going into the turn 5 where they want to play the Golem, this is very powerful. But posesi was offered deal 3 damage. I'm not sure if he took it. But if he did, it of course means that he can just go for the Golem on this turn, whereas otherwise, kind of feels like we're looking at a field contact turn and trying to find Prize Plunderer.
It could be that. There's also just coin Jandis potentially, and then just trade over the 2 mana worms. If it is the deal 3 on the Golem, then he would want to, I guess, get rid of the 1/1 first, and then give the Golem the best chance of shooting mana worm. And if he misses the other one, he can use his Foxy Fraud to then trade it off.
Yeah, all of course predicated on information to which we are not privy, sadly. But I think, even still, using the coin for Jandis doesn't quite feel worth it for me, especially when you have Golem that just is going to be decent on this turn. Yeah, coin Brain Freeze, I suppose, makes sense just to clear off some of the board whilst you're also developing. But the very fact that he did go for Stealth instead of Divine Shield is going to be pretty backbreaking for him.
Yeah, that's definitely right. I don't think there was any way he could have positioned, or well, I guess he could have put the golems in between those 2 minions to be a little bit better around combustion, but against Flame Strike, there is just nothing you can do. Shaxy is well ahead now, has the sprint. That is one of those 6-cost cards that is very likely to give card draw, and so Shaxy was thinking about this possibility, because as he can step the Jandis, I think he kind of has to just get any board presence next turn, because he's just starved of things to do.
Yeah, I mean, he's thinking if he wants to get, like, his next few turns have to revolve around field contact, and so saving the Shadow Step, I think I kind of like, because it means that if you do get that, of course, Prize Plunderer, that can be absolutely huge, or Foxy Fraud, Cult Neophyte with a step is massive in this matchup as well.
Shaxy just mousing over the Libram of Hope. It is so powerful here as well. Honestly, he didn't even need to bet on the illusion here, but like it's pretty obvious that it's on the 3-2. But even if he didn't take the mind game, it's just 1 less health on the Wormweaver, and then he just has a giant 8/8 on board. And I'm pretty sure he's supposed to just heal face, not take any chances. This is his only piece of guaranteed heal in the deck, because again, the Flame Strike and Mask of Cthulhu were drawn prior to Lunacy.
Yeah, I agree completely. The only question is whether you do want to go for that on this turn, whether there's any merit to just like being a tiny bit more mana efficient and going Rhyme Tongue plus Water Elemental, but at the end of the day, this is just better than that anyway, even if it floats some mana.
Yeah, it's huge stats. posesi's not able to VT over the Wormweaver with the 4/5, and he's honestly not able to do very much of anything at all. He can like get a field contact with Cult Neophyte played twice this turn and disrupt Shaxy, but there's just nothing he can do about the board.
And so I think you probably go digging and try and find something better to do with this hand. In terms of what you could actually draw that would be good, honestly, even Prize Plunderer isn't good enough here, because if you go Field Contact Neophyte, you'd have to play it on, I guess, the Divine Shield and then step it back to get a full trade. It's not terrible, but it's not great either.
Looks like he's going Mankrik instead, says that his best out is generating 3/7s immediately. You know what? I respect it. The situation is bad enough to warrant this.
Now he's, of course, thinking about holding onto the Shadow Step to Shadow Step Tenwu. I think he probably, in the end does just end up on going for stepping the Mankrik for another 3/7. But when you have Alexstrasza in hand and no Octobot to discount the cost of them, stepping Tenwu and saving it in hand does, of course, allow you that 16 damage burst on turn 10. But the situation is just too dire to even consider that for Shaxy. He is dying way too quickly.
Yeah, under so much pressure. Free counterspell for Shaxy as well, and like just a very easy way to clear this board. Sign me up.
Just letting rip with Soul Rend. I respect it. Yeah, you burn some of the cards from your deck, but I don't think you're going to be hitting the bottom of it anyway, and you should have plenty of value to win the game.
With the mask for the full 10 damage, it is just guaranteed lethal next turn. Even if Posesi generates a counter spell or something off of a Wand Thief, Shaxy has another spell in hand to test for it, so there's literally 0 outs. He's not seen any discounts, and he's seen the coin, so Alex can't come down this turn either. Just very clean from Shaxy.
Yeah, you'd have to play Neophyte like 5 times on this turn for there to be any out at all, which does not sound especially likely. So Shaxy is going to be able to turn this one around. It's finally a win against the Rogue, which is obviously a big deal, and does mean that Shaxy still has a reasonable matchup against the Demon Hunter, but it is, again, that Druid where he could really struggle.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we see Posesi cool as a cucumber despite being absolutely demolished by this lunacy draw. He knows the Druid versus Mage matchup from both ends, indeed. And Posesi, in particular, is of the opinion that you don't actually keep lunacy versus Druid. At least that was when he was running the specialist deck, though, with 2 shooting stars, 2 flame strikes. So maybe now that we're back in just one version of the deck per deck in this format, Shaxy might be thinking lunacy is his best chance again, because Token Druid was already a bad matchup even before the nerf to Spring Water. It's only gotten worse.
Yeah, it has. And I think I would argue, like, if you just play deck of lunacy coined out or just played on turn 4 against an average Druid hand or a Druid hand that makes a board on turn 4 or 5, you are unfavored. You need pretty specific draws to win the game. Obviously, if you hit Flame Strike, Cycle of Hatred in particular, you can just instantly win the game on the spot, but it's still not a great matchup. And with no Q order nonsense happening here for Posesi, he can do it however he wants. There's no benefit to winning 3-1, 3-2, or whatever. You just want to be getting the win. So I think we are probably just going to see the Druid here, most likely, to try and just snipe a win right off the bat.
Yeah, and we can see the fabled 3-1 match result in LHS. And Posesi, no frills with this deck. It is all the 2-ofs. We're not seeing any guidance, not seeing any resizing pouches for Alex Straza, just the goods there.
Yeah, God forbid I be impressed with a resizing pouch into Alex Straza when it's just a 33% chance. It's not even impressive at all. But yeah, overall, it has just been a cornerstone of obviously APAC in general, and even the Japanese players in general. Like, if we think back to the start of Token Druid and the real rise in its popularity in Grandmasters, although I think it was Rivius who first slotted in Ysera Unleashed in the Token Druid. I think that was the first time I'd ever seen it. It was the Japanese players who really perfected it and really ran with the list for a long time, getting a huge amount of effect out of it, drawing very well and playing very well. So even though it has been, the Blitzchung show recently in terms of Druid, as he has been playing very well, we of course have to remember, pay respect to the OGs with Posesi, Alutemu, and Glory, who have been rocking this deck for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a stretch to call that old version still Token Druid because it's more of Guardian Animals as a win condition, but it did have the Mount Seller, right? And you could create those token boards, and then Glowfly got added in, and it became Token Druid again. Fun to go over the history of these archetypes, but right now, Druid is very streamlined. They don't have these alternate win conditions of dragons or Mount Seller boards, but what they do have is a lot of redundancy with how to build those first early boards of either Gibberling or Glowfly Swarm, and they have a lot of ways to buff them. And the Fungal in the opening hand for Posesi, definitely love to see it, but I'm kind of surprised to see him toss Guess the Weight when he's on the play.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that as well. I don't think you're in you're in a lot of fear of overdrawing. To be honest, even if you are, who cares? You have a full hand of cards. But picking up the Nature Studies is premium, as it of course allows him to go Fungal on 2. But it looks like he's actually having a bit of dilemma. Would you ever miss the card draw just to develop a couple of 2/2s?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as though he's missing it, right? He could just still follow the curve and play Fungal on 3 for next turn, and sometimes he's just pushed an extra 4 damage. It's just thinking, what are the merits of going Fungal this turn immediately, which is to say, if he hits exactly Glowfly plus Lightning Bloom in those next few draws, then he can get it down a bit earlier. I think that's niche enough that it's fine to go for landscaping here.
Sure, I don't hate it. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's very, very niche draws that would stop him from going landscaping next turn anyway.
There's also, I guess, some benefit to going fungal, and then if your very next draw after the fungal is Gibberling, then you're kind of happy, but again, there's just chances of overdrawing the Gibberling itself. But that top deck for Shaxy is absolutely enormous.
And you do just... sorry, I was going to say you just snap play it. There is actually, I think, some reasoning to go for Runed Orb this turn just because it clears something, and then coin Deck of Lunacy into the Incantus Flow, right? Because I think, even though it's not especially impactful in this matchup, I would probably still rather go Deck of Lunacy and then Incantus Flow if I could choose.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. He also just has more chances to hit the 7-cost AoE kind of slot if you start with Lunacy, right? Because if you go Flow first, then it's your 5-cost cards that become the 7-cost cards, which are just the 2 Apexis Blasts. And I guess the Spring Waters now as well. I forgot about that. So it's still fine. There's still a lot of chances to hit AoE. And I guess he's just saying this incremental damage he takes early doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because Posesi will be dealing huge waves of damage to close out the game later on. So thinking about the nerf to Spring Water, I don't hate this line at all.
To be fair, Posesi does have a pretty chip damagey kind of hand though, right? He could follow up this these 2/2s with another Thorn Growth plus Adorable Infestation, which obviously again forgoes the card draw, but if he buffs the right Treant, it would even make Combustion a little bit difficult to clear.
It's true, but I think that's getting a little bit too cute now, because when you go for card draw, there's a chance now to hit either Glowfly plus Innervate or Lightning Bloom plus Innervate and get the Glowfly for the very next turn, which is, of course, game plan A. Shaxy, without having played Lunacy first, there's just no natural way in the deck to deal with the big Glowfly board, which is why the matchup is so favorable for Druid to begin with. So Posesi just going back to basics is, I think, absolutely correct here.
And here it is, Posesi hit with Incantus Flow into Deck of Lunacy 2 games in a row, which is a difficult pill to swallow. But he can immediately ratchet up the pressure if he wants to with Bloom, Glowfly, Adorable. But I guess at this point he's saying that's not really clean enough. There's not he can still develop onto the board without having to overload.
Yeah, I think if he had gone for the Glowfly and then with the Bloom and Adorable, he ends up wasting a board space.
Right, yeah.
With the Adorable minion spawn, and also gets overloaded. So this achieves a very similar effect in terms of just if he gets any buff spell next turn, Shaxy's in a lot of trouble. It pushes less immediate damage on board, but still maintains the Glowfly for full mana.
Sprint is a monstrous pickup for Shaxy. I think he overdraws if he just rips it, but I mean, honestly, I'm still kind of considering it.
Right. He won't have mana to play anything super significant off of this, but it's fine. Oh, alignment!
Oh no!
Performers is huge though.
Yeah, the fact that the 7 cost he got is Celestial Alignment is kind of bad, in all honesty, because if the Druid has a big board, they just play one Arbor up, one Pride's Fury, Soul of the Forest, whatever, and they're just winning the game anyway. For what were premium mana cost slots on the 7 mana, those are pretty disastrous outcomes with drawing the alignment and discarding the performers.
And not to mention the rest of the turn from Shaxy, if we can just get this to reconnect. I'm the only one allowed to be frozen here, Shax. Yeah, because the Thalnos will draw him into 10 again, which means that he overdraws one more after Posesi takes a trade, and he probably will. I don't think Shaxy wants to Devolving Missiles this card, but he could be saying he wants maximum hand space to draw yet another one of those 7 cost spells, of which there's 2 remaining. So this is purely just to dump hand space. I don't know if that's right, though, because like the Thalnos, you still do get to like draw 1. And you overdraw 1, but like that good card you want could be anywhere in the deck, right?
I mean, he literally just made the board better, because I can't quite see, but I think that's Novice Zapper as the 1 cost that was made. So he literally upgraded his opponent's board.
That is unfortunate.
Obviously, that's not likely to happen, but there with Pride's Fury.
He's just dead. Bloom Solar. Wait, sorry, that's Glowfly. That's not Arbor Up, but this is pretty much dead as well.
Yeah, even if it's not lethal, which it's rapidly approaching, if not. It's looking pretty disastrous. Is it just game? Oh yeah, 1 over.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Unfortunate for Shaxy that he wasn't quite able to get there, as he had the nuts with the Incantus flow into the deck of Lunacy. Exactly what he was looking for when he kept the deck of Lunacy in the starting hand. But imagine being able to beat a Japanese player on Token Druid. Truly impressive with it. And overall, I think just well played by posesi. Sorry, the chip damage by starting off with the Treants really did start to stack up. And just overall not chewing up board slots by going for a Glowfly too early, not being overly tempted with Thorn Growth into Adorable as I would have been, just led to a very easy win.
Yeah, I mean, it's just very simple the way that Token Druid operates. It's consistent in the way that it builds boards, maybe not